Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Patty.
You made some changes at the last minute, so I might have to hide behind that podium more than I want to today. But right now, I'll be right here. Last week, we had a wonderful symposium, as you've already heard, led by Pam Prather and Charlie Rogers, and several of us went to it. One of the things, the symposium was about how life has changed in the past 300 or 400 years. Life has changed in a big way. There's been a big shift in our consciousness, of our collective consciousness in Western thought. The thought is now, it has been for these past few hundred years, that the earth is ours to do what we want to do with it. We learned a lot about science, and we learned how to manipulate earth because of our scientific knowledge. And that's all good. A lot of good things came from it. Medicine, conditions of life, the lifespan of human beings has increased amazingly, and the death rate has gone down. A lot of people are much better off because of the new world that we live in, the age of enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution. But we're also starting to realize now that there's some problems. We've kind of run ahead of things so much, as the symposium so blatantly pointed out, that we now are using up and littering the world so much, the thought of, I'll just throw that away. And the question was, where is away? It's not away, it's still there. To the point where our oceans are clogged with litter, as big as the state of New Jersey, something floating in the Pacific Ocean. And the mountains are being stripped of their beauty so we can pull the resources out of it. And many, many people are suffering because of the use of the resources or the abuse of the resources. It was a pretty dim picture for the first part of the symposium. But it got better because we started to learn that there are people who are doing things. And a lot of good things are happening. We learned that there's enough technology for us to really make some big changes scientifically, industrially, if we just had the energy behind it to do it, human energy. And toward the end of the symposium, we were asked, what will I do to make a difference? Thus, the new revitalized campaign that, who was it? Deborah Marie said. I just couldn't remember her name. I'm trying to remember all your names. The idea of let's do something here on this piece of earth to make sure we're doing as much as we can to make a difference. But the other part of the challenge was, what will we do spiritually? And that's a little less concrete. And as one of the spiritual teachers of this community, I thought, well, then what is it that we can think about for a few minutes today that we can do spiritually? Well, there's, first of all, for us to realize that this shift that has taken place in the past 300-400 years, the Industrial Revolution and so forth, is a change in consciousness. It's not the way we've always been thinking. And for us to realize that, we can realize that we can shift again. So what was going on in our thinking, humans thinking, before this big shift of the Industrial Revolution? When we think about some of the people who spoke of spiritual things before that shift, some of you might think of some of the early mystics of Christianity, Meister Eckhart, Hildegard of Bingen, And if you've done anything reading on that, you might know some things. I found one that Hildegard said, 1100, the year 1100 or so. This is how her oneness with nature is something we can call ourselves back to. And this also reminds me of the Psalms. So we know that the ancient peoples of Western thinking had a awareness of their oneness with creation, as the Psalms said. But here's what Hildegard wrote. The fire has its flame and praises God. The wind blows the flame and praises God. In the voice we hear the word, which praises God. And the word, when heard, praises God. So all of creation is a song of praise to God. So to the medieval thinking, the cosmos, or the whole universe, all of that it is a piece of praise to the Creator. It's not an abstraction. It's not an enemy or an object to run from, which is what we seem to have done in our modern society. It's a gift. It's a maternal womb that births everything. Thomas Aquinas, 1200 CE, a great teacher of Christianity. He said that the entire cosmos is graced. He said ecstasy, which is the experience of God, by whatever name you call it, ecstasy is everywhere in the cosmos. The experience of God is everywhere. Love of any kind, love of a tree, or a violin, or a saxophone, or a person, or the earth, or ideas produces an experience of God. Spirit. I've learned a lot about cosmos and the idea of cosmos from Matthew Fox. And a lot of that, if you would like to read more, there's so much, you can't fit into a 15-minute talk. Original Blessing by Matthew Fox. Creation-centered spirituality. He writes, the creation-centered theology is cosmic. It is open, seeking, and explorative of the cosmos within the human person and all creatures, and the cosmos without, the spaces that the creatures that are between each creature unites us all. The truth is that there is not an inside or an outside cosmos, but rather one cosmos. We are in the cosmos, and the cosmos is in us. So, there was a lot of reasons why we moved away from that awareness of oneness. Science has a lot to do with it. Every time we started to get how things worked, we didn't have to say, God did it, because we got it. We got it. Newtonian physics has a lot to do with also, because Newtonian says for everything that happens, there's a cause for it, and it's directly related. The sin and redemption theology pulled us further from the cosmos as well, because we started to realize that the most important thing for us to focus on is to get saved. It was inward, an inward thing, a personal thing, and a theology of separation. I need to realize that I need to get right with God, instead of thinking we're already one. And another thing, I think, is the patriarchal society. And we're realizing that, there was Matthew Fox brings up a letter from King Ferdinand, who is the king during Columbus's time. You might remember that name. And King Ferdinand says to the people of the West Indies, he writes a letter, and he says, you've got to know, I'm not going to paraphrase rather than reading it all, you've got to know that the Pope is the ruler of the universe. And you need to be subjects to him just as we are. So become part of this Christian thing that is all there is in that attitude. And if you don't, we're going to make sure you're hurting from it. He spelled it out, what he would do. Take your children away from you, torture you. He's very, very literal in this letter from King Ferdinand to the native people of the West Indies. A good example of how, and back to the point of it, the Pope is the ruler of the universe. God gave St. Peter the right to rule the universe. That's what I mean by a patriarchal society. And so those kind of the factors have helped to help us realize how our consciousness has shifted. But again, if we shifted our consciousness, we can realize that that's not the only paradigm that we need to live in. People have lived before without that paradigm, and we can shift back. Not to undo all the beautiful things we've learned about science and the value it's given us, but to go back to the other ancient thoughts as well and bring them into a new consciousness so that we really integrate, transcend, and include. We transcend, let go of the stuff that's not so serving us, and include the stuff that we can still value from the ancients. On top of all of this, I'm getting emails from Unity World Headquarters that is, they're showing me that they're progressing over the past month since the Unity People's Convention back in June, where everybody whoever wants to can come to wherever it's happening and talk over things. Well, their keynote speaker was Barbara Marx Hubbard. She's a very good friend of Unity, and she really inspired this large group of people in the Detroit metropolitan area where they met. She said some things, and that's why I say I have to go back to my notes, because I just listened to her recorded talk last night and said, oh, I've got to change some things. I really want her to inspire you. And this also came up because last Wednesday when we had our Pat chat, we talked about what kind of books would we like to study together, and one of them was maybe we'd like to look at Barbara Marx Hubbard's book called Emergence, The Shift from Ego to Essence. She says that, the shift that we're calling ourselves to do could be the shift from ego, thinking you're just yourself and you're on your own and just your thoughts, to realizing that we are of divine essence. And certainly as a Unity teaching, isn't it? It's what you've been learning from Chad all these years, and I've been learning from my Unity teachers, and all Unity teachers all over the world are teaching the same thing, to shift from ego to divine essence. And that's exactly what Barbara teaches. And she said in her address to the Unity People's Convention, who has the best potential to birth this new consciousness but Unity? Because we've been doing this work for a long time. I love what Myrtle Fillmore said. She advises in letters, her healing letters. We set to work to change anything and everything that we may find that doesn't measure up to the best that our new light shows us. We set to change it. And we know that it is of much more importance to change and to do that which is best for our progress and for our health than to be smugly consistent. Or to make the excuse that we've always done a thing and that it's too late to change. The moment we discover, says Myrtle, the moment we discover something undesirable in our minds or in our lives, we should seek to make the changes necessary to bring the desirable into manifestation. She is one of the co-creators of founders of Unity, along with her husband Charles. She's been called the Mother of Hope. Well, so has Barbara Marx Hubbard, the mother of hope. And she's one of our spiritual leaders of today and feels completely united with the Unity movement. She says, this is a pregnant moment, and we are giving birth to a new idea, a new way of thinking, so we can really integrate those values of the past peoples and the values of science and technology and birth a new reality. And so she says, the Mayan calendar says that the world as we know it is going to end on December 21, 2012. It's only a few months away. And all the public news media is making a big deal of that, calling it doomsday, and movies are being created, and all the fear is being brought up. And she says, the only thing we know for sure is that after December 21, we're going to have December 22. So what are we going to do about it? She's calling us to have a big birthday on December 22, a global celebration of the new birth of a new reality, a new consciousness. Now that might seem silly because we're only just a few people, but what if our church did that, and Greenville did that, and Greensboro, North Carolina did that, and Raleigh did that, and every Unity church across America and the Pacific Basin did that. That's the energy that came up during the People's Convention in June. Boy, did they get excited. So that last night, the email that got me excited was, now there's a letter from a Unity person, Reverend Deborah Olive, who used to be a minister in Raleigh, who's now on the West Coast somewhere, wrote a letter speaking for Unity, and it was published on the email that came out for the Shift Network with Stephen Dinan. So now Unity is getting this big boost of publicity. And they're all uniting to do exactly what we were called to do from that symposium that Charlie and Pam asked us to do. What can we do to help make that shift in consciousness? There's plenty of things we can do, even individually. Whether or not we have a big birthday party or not on that date, we can also just tune into ones that are being live streamed on that date. So I just want to plant the seed, and perhaps we will study that book together, the one I just mentioned, The Shift from Ego to Essence. I ordered it so I could take a look at it. And we'll be talking about that again at the next Pat Chat on August 8th. But in the meantime, I'm thinking of a few things we could do. One is what I did in the meditation today. We can take a moment to go into our heart center and realize that science is showing us that it is a radiating energy, and we can focus on it and push that radiating love energy out to others. Just by doing that exercise once in a while, daily would be great, we can start to retrain our minds to realize our oneness, rather than always being caught in that consciousness of being separate. Just practicing that meditation of oneness can help us. I think another thing we can do is get out there and be part of nature and make it a spiritual experience. And boy, do you guys, you're looking at this area with new eyes as I am. I've just been here for a month. I am just reveling in the beauty of being in the mountains. Do you know that the rangers along the Blue Ridge Parkway offer a hike every Friday morning on some trail that's off the parkway, and it's free. And I went and joined one last Friday and found out that, they did environmental education. They showed us what the ferns were, and name a few of the ferns and why they grow here and not there. And so you're learning, that's intellectual learning, but it's helping you to really see what you're seeing. And if you just add one more, the spiritual aspect to that environmental experience, always reminding yourself, and this is God, and this is God. And this green is God, and this yellow is God, and this sunshine is God. We were walking, and it was just pretty high elevation, and it was morning, and you know what that means around here. You've got some clouds at the top of the mountain. You're right in the middle of the water cycle. Wow, that's God. Well, we had ponchos and raincoats, and then we were hiking, so we were getting hot, and I had to take the hood off my poncho, and it was still misty, whatever that is, it's coming down as you're walking through a cloud. And I realized when I got back to my car, my hair was as wet as it would be as if I had just towel dried it. It was that kind of moisture. And I realized it was wet with rainwater. When's the last time your hair was wet with pure rainwater? And what a great experience that is. Another thing you could do is turn over rocks to look for salamanders, which we did that day. You know, find the little creatures and know that that's God. You're one with all of it. Play with mud. Let it squish between your fingers and know that it's God. It's all God. It's all God. Another thing we can do, as Charles and Myrtle have taught us, and they learned from their own experience of how affirmations can change the way we see things and the way we experience things, is to find an affirmation, to make yourself an affirmation, and to use it daily. Affirmations is the way I changed my way of seeing things, from victim consciousness to anything is possible consciousness. Just changing those ruts in my brain about how I can't to how something is possible. And all it was to, when I caught myself thinking a negative thought, I couldn't remember it on my own. I wrote them on Post-it notes all over my house to remember what thought I could replace the negative thought with. So we can do that on a cosmic basis too. So often we don't get our feet dirty. We brush our hands off as soon as we touch dirt, like, ooh, dirt. We're so disconnected from the cosmos. It's raining. We can't get wet. Oh, it's humid. Turn on the air conditioning. You know, anything that has to do with nature, we step away from. And so what is that telling our brain? That we're not part of it. So it's good to have some sort of affirmation to replace those negative thoughts with. And I did give you one on most of your chairs. You have something that's bright canary gold color. So that could be one thing you could say, and I'm inviting you to say it with me this morning. If you can find one. Are you ready? Together. At this moment now, I am a part of the cosmos. Through my attitudes and actions, I bring balance, beauty, and love to the world around and within me. Take that home with you. Put it somewhere. If it's on your windshield or on your bathroom mirror or on the sliding glass door just before you step out onto the deck. Say it aloud. Let your brain recognize that as a truth statement at this moment now. At any moment, at this moment now, I am one with the cosmos. Everything that's out there and every space between it, from the very step outside your door to the entire Milky Way, you're one with it. Knowing that is going to help shift our consciousness one person at a time. And that's all we can do. The people who are in charge of everything, the politicians, the scientists, the industrial waste disposal people, the nuclear physicists, can't do it alone. If they could, they would have done it by now because they're aware as much as we are. But they can't do it alone. They can do it with our help, with our conscious backing of them. And allowing that collective consciousness to surround this entire planet, we can make a shift. Just like the shift that happened in the past, we can make another shift to birth a new reality on December 22, perhaps, and beyond. So, thank you. God bless.